Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another great week. And this time, it's slightly different than the usual topics that we use to have here on Call Launch and Run, but it's still a really relevant and important topic. And it's all about FinOps. And we have Vincent with us, okay? As usual, for those that are on the first time joining us, we will have here this chat experience that you can always interact with us. Let us know where are you connecting from, so we get to know each other more. And also, if you have any questions anytime, just feel free to use the chat to drop your questions there, and we are going to cover those questions during the presentation or at the end, depending on the volume of questions, of course. Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Vincent. So, hello, Vincent. How are you doing?
Hey, good afternoon. Doing great. Thanks for great to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for us. So this is as you know, a group led by community. So that means we always welcome everyone that want to contribute to this group. So tell us a little bit about yourself, so we get to know you.
Yeah, so I'm Vincent de Klerk, based in Belgium. I'm actually relatively new diving deep into the cloud space because my history is a bit more on the venture capital side, which is investing in startups and also strategy, so a bit high level for tech companies. But my interest field is very broad, and I'm actually working on a business now in the cloud space, and it's FinOps has been kind of a very central piece to what we're doing, and that's why we're talking to a lot of companies about it and learning a lot from what they're saying, and that's why we're here to talk a bit about what we've learned from those conversations.
Perfect. That sounds really interesting. I just wonder, are you happy to just share your screen and we kick off?
Definitely.
Thank
Here we
you.
go.
And for everyone, feel free. If you have any questions, drop those questions in the chat. We will cover them. I see some people already just saying hello. So Mazda from India, hello Mazda, welcome. It has been a long time. That's true. As you know, we have a group of people on Call Launch and Run moderating sessions, and not always the same person is moderating, but this time it's me here. I'm going to just enable Vincent's screen. And Vincent, are you happy to take over?
Yeah, there we go. We're ready to start.
Enjoy the session. Thank you.
Yeah, and anytime, guys, when we're going ahead, don't hesitate to put something in the comments if I'm glossing over something too quickly or there's a question. Really here to share some things for you, so it's not a problem at all. Don't hesitate. But so the title of the conversation today is FinOps is dead. Long live FinOps. So as you might be able to tell from the title, we're going to be talking about the field of FinOps, and first of all, we're going to start with what it is and why it's coming up, and how we see things that are possible there and why it's really interesting. But then we're going to talk about why it's dead, which is of course a way to say that it's struggling. There's some problems there. Maybe some of you have actually already experienced some of those struggles. So let's see if you can relate. But then we're actually going to finish with long live FinOps, because we do believe there is a way to make it work, and we do believe it has a big future and a big role to play, but it needs to be done well. So that's a bit the structure of the talk today. We have 15 minutes. We have also some Q&A at the end, so I'll try to go rather quickly. But again, if there's a certain piece you want me to go deeper, let me know. So yeah, FinOps. Here's a bit of a funny meme to start it out, set a bit the scene. So this is a conversation of someone who gets a text from their girlfriend or partner about a lot of money going out of the account, and just thinks it's for a wedding ring, but it's actually going to AWS. And that's of course the world of FinOps, right? AWS, but also GCP or Microsoft Azure. They're expensive. Especially if you're growing and scaling, it costs quite some money. There's no way around it. Whether it's 15,000 euros or 1,000 euros or €1 million per month or per year, it's usually quite a big burden. Hence why this field is coming up. This is another one kind of, it's humorously, of course, but the person is homeless because they left a EC2 instance on and forgot about it. And of course, they keep paying for it and gets out of hand. But let's get a bit more serious. FinOps, it's coming up. I mean, there's a foundation, there's events. I've been to those events. They're growing very quickly. And it's coming up for a good reason, because cloud spending is just booming. It's going to be at $1 trillion at 2027, growing at a pace of 20%. It's quite unseen. If you just look at the stock market, I mean, Microsoft, Amazon, even also the really hardware layer, the infrastructure layer, is just booming because the demand is exploding for infrastructure and cloud infrastructure. All these companies going to the cloud. We'll talk about that in a minute. And these companies that are leading, the hyperscalers, etc., making a lot of money on that. And that's especially why FinOps is growing. It's kind of coming to the surface that if companies are spending so much, they might not be spending all of that money on good things. So they're actually wasting a bunch of their expenditure. It's estimated at about a third of the total amount spent, and about that almost every company in the world has some spend that they could be avoiding when it comes to their cloud spend. So that's really why this field is coming up. And especially on that last part today, I mean, everybody knows we're a bit in a tougher economic climate. Companies are looking where to cut budgets or be more efficient. So hence, FinOps is coming more to the center. Another component of FinOps that gets talked about a lot, but not always well understood, is the CapEx to OpEx shift. This is a bit more of a financial topic, but I would probably make it very easy to compare it with a car. Let's say you have 3 people in your house, and the old way, CapEx way, would be that you each buy a car, and because you have it, it's probably standing still quite a lot in your basement, so you kind of like want to use it because you have it. Otherwise, if you buy a car and you almost never use it, it kind of feels like waste. That's CapEx. It's like really an investment. You put a lot of money up front and you kind of write it off in the business terms. You try to use it as much as possible. That's also what used to happen with infrastructure, right? People used to buy servers. They order them, they go through like an approval flow in the company, they get them, and then they try to use them. And whether they use them a bit or a lot, it didn't really matter that much. Or better use them a lot, better buy enough, 3 cars. So if we have to go 3 different places, buy 3 cars, buy a lot of servers, so we can always handle what we need to handle. But that's shading, because people are going to the cloud now for good reasons. And it's going to an OpEx model, which is not buying the car, but renting the car, or even taking Ubers. You could also compare it to that. But then all of a sudden, your mind completely changes. It's not about each one buying a car, and if you rent it, you're not just going to put it all the time in your house. It's way different. It's going to be much more on the spot, what you need. Maybe you go all together in 1 car, 3 cars. And that's the shift. CapEx to OpEx, investments to kind of usage-based pricing. And this is causing actually some problems in these companies because they're used to the CapEx for these things. And they have around CapEx, you have a lot of processes and procurement, etc., that keeps it all well packaged. But now they're going to OpEx, which is much more like the money's going fast and faster decisions. So that's that. I hope that's clear for everyone. So how do you know you have cloud waste, or like what are the data showing? There's basically 2 parts. If this is more based on compute, but you could do this for any spend item in the cloud. You have the over provisioning, which is really about the quantity, and there you can see companies are just using less than a fifth on average of the things that they're paying for. And there's overpricing, which is not a lot of companies, almost no one is able to really shop around and check for the best deal and use cheap things like spot instances. We'll get to a minute to why that is not happening. But if you look at those 2 things, they're buying too much and they're buying too expensive, and you can see it in the data. And that's why FinOps is coming up. And because like if you look at this, if you understand this, and you're saying we're spending $1 million per year on cloud, but we should be paying less. Okay, let's do something about it, right? Especially if you're paying $100 million on cloud. Let's say you're a very big company and you're under pressure. So let's do this FinOps thing. But what does FinOps actually mean? We should probably start there with a definition. This is the definition of the FinOps Foundation. It has actually very interesting elements, which I'm going to go with one by one. So it's an operational framework and a cultural practice. Very important part. So it's part of the operational framework. It's part of the way we do business, and it's a cultural practice. So it's part of the culture. It maximizes the business value of cloud. So it's not just about reducing the cost. It's actually about making sure that whatever we spend in the cloud is generating the most amount of business value, right? Very important part as well. Enables timely data-driven decision making. So we need to make decisions based on data, and we cannot be waiting years to make a decision on something that's going wrong. We'll get to that in a minute as well, but it sounds reasonable, right? Creates financial accountability. Again, people take ownership over what they're spending. If I'm buying something really expensive, I should be able to explain why. And then lastly, very important, collaboration between engineering, finance, and business teams. Let's be honest, these teams usually don't really work together that much. They're usually quite different in their way of being, let's say it like that. We'll get to that also in a moment. But in this thing, it's needed because we're talking about finance of cloud, right? And business value. And there's three phases in the FinOps cycle that they talk about in the FinOps Foundation. It's like informing, which is bringing all the data and the insights to people. There's optimizing, which is, once you have those data and insights, where are you going to be able to make it more efficient or create more business value from the things that you're spending? And there's operating, which is how do you then bake that into an operational model? How do you not just do this once, but keep this going in the future? The foundation also talks about some principles. It's kind of the same thing. If you go over the definition, actually, it's very much similar to collaboration, the business value, the ownership, the data, accessible and timely, decentralized team. Maybe that's a bit of a new thing. Someone should be kind of driving it. And the variable cost model of the cloud, just like with Ubers or with renting, take advantage of it. Use it the days that you need it. And take an Uber when you need it, but don't use it like a car that you could just go everywhere all the time, and you buy as much as possible to make sure you always have something. That's a bit the FinOps principles. Before we go further, I just want to say I'm not a FinOps. I'm not like someone who wakes up and thinks about FinOps, right? And I think you probably don't either. This is also a field that I've been diving into with FirstMate now, the new company, and we've been discussing a lot and working a lot with companies around this. But I would say this is something that me and I think a lot of other people kind of get exposed to after experiencing things. And so, when you see these things, it's kind of it's more of an informative thing. It's like, yeah, okay, interesting. And I think when I first started diving into this, I was actually quite amazed. But if we go back to the first part, it's like about so much being wasted. And I said, like, well, how is that possible? And these companies wasting so much money and so much things. And I said, if you would be able to, if you would do that with like food or something, or with water or with employees or something, you would probably feel very bad, right? Because it's like very physical. If you look at food, like over provisioning, if you're going to host a lunch and learn like this, and you think there's 50 people coming, so you buy lunch for 100, and there's only 20 that show up, and you have to throw away 80 persons worth of food. It's going to make you feel some type of way, right? Like you're not going to be feeling just, I don't care. Maybe you do, but for me, the physical part makes it different. And that's a bit the thing with cloud also. It's not physical. And then overpricing, another thing, right? Like, let's say you do a lunch and learn and you want to get beef. Like, you can get the most expensive beef in the world, right? Like a Wagyu steak, spend hundreds of dollars, or you can get a normal steak. Which one's better? I think objectively the Wagyu is probably better. But do you really need the Wagyu, right? Do you need to do that? And I think when we talk about FinOps and we talk about engineering and technical teams, that those two things are discussions that FinOps is about. Because if you will sometimes ask a technical person, we get to it in a minute, like, what should we do? What's the best thing to do? They might be going for the Wagyu because that's the answer to the question. Like, that's the best thing. That's the best steak. but do we need, like, what's the cost of that, right? Like, it's maybe a little bit better than a normal steak, but does that make it worth so much more expensive? And it's those kind of conversations that FinOps is trying to bring it to the management level in a way that they can understand, so that this conversation can be had. So that's not just someone who orders the Wagyu and says, I'm the chef. Everyone's eating a Michelin star food, but the company pays the bill. That's kind of that's the principle, right? And to round it up about FinOps introduction, what are the things that we hear a lot about? Saving opportunities. There's all the different parts of a cloud build. Like the compute part is usually very significant. There's right sizing there on Kubernetes pods and nodes, and there's kind of doing things to make sure that the request size, for example, of the pods is rightly set, and spot instances, or updating the generations. There's actually quite a lot you can do. You can go quite deep in that. There's also tools for that. And yeah, a lot of companies are not really doing that so well if you look at the beginning. Storage, that's another one we hear a lot. Databases and storage, like how do you keep this? There's like different types of retention policies, and gold versus archive, etc., where you pay less based on how much you're really going to need this. Same thing for logging, by the way. Another thing where companies sometimes just put a default or a really good option, but it's maybe overkill. Third-party tools, bit the same story. Sometimes, they're on a premium plan, but they're only using the basic features. Once you know that, you can act on it. Procurement. I mean, this is actually where we see the most probably FinOps happening is really on the last part, which is the contract, where the finance team is like, we want to make a deal here. Like, what can you give us? Oh, we'll give you a 70% discount if you lock it in for 3 years. Sounds good. That happens a lot. Obviously, there's its flip side to that story, because then you get locked in. But it does give you like a nice discount, and it's relatively not a lot of work, right? Like, so everyone's kind of happy. And then lastly, like, there's other things, like if you look at FinOps, they want to allocate the cost, so you need to tag your things. There's things like, for example, around being smart around SLAs, like if you have multi-region or multi-zone, like you probably just need that for production, not for your dev. So there's a lot you can do. So good news, right? There's a lot we can do. Let's start doing it. Well, not so easy. Not so easy. What's the problem actually? Why is this not already everywhere? Like this seems like a problem that will solve itself, right? The answers are there. Just look around on Google for an hour, and you can find a lot of things I just talked about. So what's happening? Well, a couple things, and we'll get to each one in a minute, but we've been having a lot of conversations about this with a lot of companies, and like every one of them actually just says, yeah, it's true, we're probably wasting money. Yeah, let's maybe do something about it. But it just doesn't really seem to be going forward. And we kind of identified some reasons what's happening there, what's stopping them. I think the first one is a very fundamental one, which is this is an interdisciplinary field between two different stakeholders that are very different and very unalike, and the ownership is kind of spread. So first you have what we would call like a management or CFO level, right? They think high level. They look at the budgets, they look at the P&L, they look at the profit, and they want to be, thinking for going forward, what are we going to do with the business? They see they see the graph of the cloud spending going up. They say, oh, what the hell is going on? So that's why the spark is there, because they get kind of triggered. But they think really high level. Like they think about cloud strategy. Oh, we're in a cloud strategy. What's our cloud strategy? High level. Oh, we need to move to the cloud. Don't ask them about Kubernetes. Don't ask them about really technical things, right? Like even like maybe multi-zone they still understand, but like they think really high level, and they see budgets. They think, okay, what's the budget? What should we put the budget here, and how to make sure that we can maybe control it through a budget. Obviously not easier said than done, right? And they think about profit, and they think about what do we need to do and changing. Usually when we have conversations with companies, these are actually the people that are the most inclined to talk to us and to try to do something, because they feel a need. and they feel like there's not really something happening. But what happens then is they send us to the ops infra team. Let's maybe just add the developers to it, because we could just call it a technical team. And because they're like, yeah, like, guys, here's this amazing guys, let's do something about it. But obviously we're not going to do something here in this field without your agreement, because this is your field. This is not our domain. Like, we're not technical people. We cannot just tell you to do this. We need to talk to our guys. Now we talk to those guys, which might use, probably some of you are here of that team, and they just have a very different worldview. They run a very different state, especially of you more ops infra people. They're trying to make sure that the ship stays afloat, right? They're not really the ones who are trying to change everything all the time. And in fact, they're trying to change least as possible, because the more you change, the more it can break. If there's not a problem, don't fix it. That's our thing. And for them, the cost is not really that much of a problem. They see it, okay, just raise the budget, or we're going to do reserved instances maybe, and that's enough. I'm not going to re-architecture, or we're not going to do really complicated things. They know everything maybe about Kubernetes, and they know everything maybe about all these open source things and stuff like that. In fact, they probably like to go very deep in that. So yes, with them you can have a deeper conversation. But at the end of the day, what they care about when they wake up and what drives them is making a quality system that's resilient, that has nice features, that's maybe a bit complex, advanced, spending time. The cost side is just not really something that they're going to get warm from. So it stops. And it's that the two different stakeholders there that are very different. I think it's a very noble mission of FinOps to connect them, but easier said than done. Very difficult, actually. Now, I think if we go a bit further into that technical team, you have to also tell, like, they have a point. They have a point, because it's not easy to be a cloud engineer or to be in an infra team or ops team. This is the CNCF map of technologies, open source technologies. This grows every month. There's updates, there's new features. Good luck to keep up, even if you're an expert with the latest thing, and to understand the nuances of what you should be paying attention to. Get bombarded with things. And it's just very difficult for those people. And then of course you also have the DevOps thing, which is like these ops infra people, they have to also be busy with the developers to enable them to worry about ops, and to give them their own Docker containers and Kubernetes clusters and Terraform and stuff. So they're constantly helping, babysitting these people also. There's so much things that can go wrong, so many variables, so many people involved, that they're just overloaded. It's not that they're not smart. It's not that they don't want to do it. It's just that their life is, they have to keep the boat running. They have to keep the boat afloat and the ship sailing. And if you give them a preference list, they're always going to say, we want to work on the gold things, right? Like, we want to make something that's secure, stable, resilient, strong. That's what they do. That's what they do. That's what they put their time and effort in. And they should be, by the way, because if that fails, everything fails. Then also they have to worry about performance. They have to worry about helping the team, like we said, about all the tools, or by using the right technologies. But that means that what we talk about here, FinOps, is just coming the last in the priorities, and there's no other way around it. And this is not a blame thing. This is just an observation. Like, if in an ideal world where everything is running perfectly, then maybe they'll spend a lot of time on it. But if you know anything about this field, you know that that situation is very rare, maybe even non-existent, because people have to do things not always the ideal way to keep moving forward. Besides, cloud engineering and infra work is stressful. They have to be on call. Something happens. They have to deal with a lot of things of version updates. They have to do all these meetings, management, helping the DevOps, etc., like we talked about. It's that's what's causing FinOps to be dead for these people. Now, lastly, let's just imagine that, we've convinced, or these people are convinced, they've got some time, let's say a summer project. What now? Well, it's still not easy. Like there's one of the annoying things is like, what's the ROI? So we're going to be spending weeks on optimizing our cloud costs. Yeah, but that also has a cost, right? Because we have man hours, we have people that have salaries or day rates or whatever. Usually not that cheap, depending on their level or whatever. But if we're spending 200K per year on cloud costs, it doesn't make sense to even have someone, a Kubernetes expert, to spend 1 month or a couple of weeks on optimizing and reducing it 10 or 20K. Actually, that ROI is not really worth it. There's so much complexity. There's so much usage-based pricing per gigabyte, per this, per that, per hour, hidden costs everywhere. So there's a lot of time just to spend figuring out like the first part, which is like data-driven, the insights. The second part, the trade-offs. Sorry, before I go on, Patrick, with landing zone, if it's more of an issue with people for landing zone, the companies that I hear that are working with landing zones, and especially if they're like lift and shift approach, I would say it's definitely a larger issue. Usually they're like, let's move to the cloud, let's get it done, let's do it lift and shift, just quick and dirty, and then they're halfway the process, and they're even like, what the hell's going on? We've budgeted this much, but it's 5 times more. And sometimes they're even saying, maybe we should just go stop this project and go back to on-premise because this is not viable. I've heard that before. And usually that's exactly what I said. Like their focus is just 100% on the cloud strategy, migration, okay, boom. And then they get to a point where the cost becomes a problem and they didn't take it in account before, because they're just taking what they have, a monolithic on-prem solution, just throwing it in the cloud and pretending like it's going to work the same, and it's going to work out the same. It's not, of course, because it's different. It's like the taxi and the car example. So yeah, if that answers your question. Yeah, but just continuing on what I was saying. So the trade-offs. So let's say that you have figured out the complexity. You found some things to optimize. Yeah, you want to make sure that it's not going to bring your SLAs in danger. You want to make sure it's not going to bring your performance in danger. You're always going to want some margins. There's also a trade-off on resources. Like I said, you're putting people on a project. Your functional roadmap might be a bit delayed, which is already a big problem. You're maybe be putting some kind of process or bureaucracy in place around spending that maybe decreases your velocity and flexibility of your people, because now they have to go ask approvals to do things, whereas like that's the whole thing of the cloud, is to be fast and agile, etc. So it's not that easy. And then the last part, it's also something that never ends, because you can do it now and in a year you can do it again from scratch, because people keep doing things. It's a dynamic situation. Like, okay, we're only using 20% of what we're provisioning. Let's bring it down. Let's do only half. So now we're using 40. Yeah, but if you're all of a sudden you're scaling and there's more customers, and I don't know, you're approaching slowly to that 100, you got to make sure you readjust, or the other way around. Like it's a situation that can be very dynamic, and it's a recurring effort. So that's why they also call it an operational thing. Again, here I say like man hours proportionate to savings. Is it really worth it, right? Are we going to save 10K per month or 10K per year? How much time do we want to spend from our team to do that compared to the other things we need to do? Okay, and then so lastly, on the FinOps is that part. What are the companies really doing in practice that we see? Usually what happens is, especially for the bigger ones, that's on the left side, they'll make a special FinOps team. Like, but these are really the big companies, right? Like Johnson & Johnson and stuff, and like the big boys, they can really get these experts in. They get a special team, and those guys, they do nothing else than to monitor. They have dashboards and they have alerts, and they have alerts on the alerts, and they call people up and they're like, what the hell is going on here? And kind of firefighting. Yeah, that's what they do. Sometimes if there's not enough money or whatever to get a special team, they might get a consultant, and they think, we can hire this guy and he's gonna fix all our problems. But yeah, of course, it never works like that, right? Like they might be able to kind of spread some knowledge. They might be able to put some processes in place, maybe optimize something for one time. But what I'm trying to get at, and what you can see in the visual as well, is this needs to be something to be successful to be kind of adopted in the broader organization. Like the FinOps Foundation says, it's not about one person or one team doing something. Everybody needs to become accountable for their costs. And that's also why those other two things that I've noted here are not really always working. Like if there's one person that cares about it and tries to bring it, but the rest doesn't really care. Or there's just a tool that we're going to try to use, and I don't know. I rarely see it working in practice. Maybe sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends also on the amount of adoption that you can create in the organization. But I think in practice, it still has a long way to go. There's some good initiatives, like for example, InfraCost, that is really shifting it left in the DevOps, trying to get people to really be conscious of their cost and in the development process already. But if we look at really what is it bringing about, it's bringing about more meetings, more governance, red tape, more change management, more reporting. It's usually reactive still, usually, and it just adds again to the cognitive load. And then there's in practice, a lot of technical people that I spoke about FinOps, they're like, FinOps, oh, please go away. They don't even want to talk about it. They don't care. They don't. They're like they even repulsed by FinOps, because the only thing they hear is like, here's more things on my plate. I'm already busy. I don't really care this much about it, and it's just someone that's going to be tapping my fingers and tell me what I'm doing wrong, and try to kind of make me do things. FinOps is dead, right? Or not, or not. We're just taking a little break because Ansil has mentioned something. Most customers have landing zone customization. The FinOps always be there. Budget, yeah, exactly. Budgets is something. Okay, long live FinOps. We're almost at the end of the thing here. What works, or what do I believe in? What do we believe in at FirstMate? Is we believe that FinOps should be part of a broader initiative. Actually, it's not about FinOps. It's about actually DevOps, and it's about bringing FinOps into that thing. And what we see now in DevOps, is if you're following DevOps, you know this, you've heard this, is platform teams and platforms. And the whole thing about platforms is you abstract away things. You make the cognitive load smaller for technical teams because you give them golden paths and paved roads, what they call, which is standard practices for people. And you have you service those insights through that platform for people, so that you have it kind of ready to go, ready these insights, and you can give ownership on things, because you have some sort of a layer that's not just about FinOps, but it incorporates FinOps, and it's all about it's also about increasing the time to market, decreasing time to market, and making faster velocity, making people's life easier, and you incorporate the FinOps in that, right? That's what we believe in. And if you look at like the platform teams as a concept, this has been going on with like Uber, Spotify, these big tech companies. They've done a really good job at this. They talk a lot about it on talks. It's really the self-service thing. But at the same time, if you're not Uber or Spotify or Salesforce, it's very tough. And even for them, it's tough. It's not always bound to succeed. It again requires dedicated resources to do this. And you have all your legacy and technical debt around you that you still need to take into account. So what's the solution, right? Like, what's the solution? And now we get a bit to this is by the way, again, like the overall idea of platform teams. By the way, this is not about FinOps. Platform teams is also about helping companies focus on business value. But we get a bit to actually the broader context of DevOps. We believe that FinOps should be part of DevOps, and we should help developers with platforms to increase the time that they spend on making features, on generating value, thereby taking away also load from the ops team and infra team, where they have to spend it now on DevOps to help developers, so that they can focus on important things and not always babysitting and helping developers with things and fixing things that they did wrong. And that includes FinOps, right? Just a little word about what we believe and how you can do that. If you're not Uber, if you're not Spotify, you can spend 10 people on a project for 12 months. We've made at FinOps, at First Made, which is with the company that I've been working on with two other people, is we've made a DevOps assistant that works with GenAI that sits on top of repositories like GitHub, Bitbucket, understands Terraform, understands what's going on, how things are built, and it can actually suggest improvements also with regards to FinOps in those infrastructure as code that can be, for example, Docker files improvements or things that are also causing hidden costs, but also things that are causing, for example, just legacy things or things that are going to break, detect it early up front. At the same time, help developers with infrastructure as code and CI/CD tasks that they normally should ask the DevOps people or the Ops people, so that these people get offloaded. And we do that actually with Gen AI and an agent approach in a safe way, in a calibrated way that's reliable, with respect for security and privacy for companies, and always with the human in the loop, so that um, unlike with a self-driving car, you still have that control. The DevOps people, Ops people are still involved. But we believe very strongly in the platform approach. We believe that the platform approach is the way to solve the FinOps problem, and that this is the way that FinOps can be alive and kicking, especially if you're not a huge multinational company that can have a special FinOps team. So that's kind of the end of the talk. I'm going to leave some time for questions, about 10 minutes. Happy to also elaborate on certain parts. Hugo, you're just muted, just so you know.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was just saying thank you very much. It was definitely a really insightful presentation. We have here some comments. First, Mazda, just saying that life cycle management is definitely a good option that you have available to save costs on storage, because it pretty much moves the data according to different rules, including the aging. So well done, Mazda. That's a great tip. Also, Patrick, we have this question from Patrick. So, do you FinOps more or less an issue in customers with a landing zone? Any
Yes,
comments on that?
I talked about it briefly during the talk.
Okay.
The companies that I've heard that have landing zones are usually the ones. I might be using too much pattern recognition here, but the ones that have been using kind of like a lift and shift approach to their cloud migration and just kind of throwing everything in the cloud from and just putting it in a landing zones. And I think those types of companies that I've spoken to that have done that are the most dealing with these issues, because they're saying that all that we wanted to do, all that the management cared about was going to the cloud as soon as possible, getting it done. And if it can be done in shorter, we'll do it shorter and just get in there and do it cloud. But then in that project, maybe there's some consultants there's some presentations, and then at 2 years in, they're like halfway in that cloud migration. It's quite complex. The costs are exploding way higher than they thought. And they're like, wait, is this still a good idea, or do we need to pull the plug on this cloud migration? So that's not really good. Like, and what we're trying to say is, like, when we talk to them, usually they say, yeah, but FinOps is a good idea, but we'll do that when we're done with going to the cloud. We're still working on that. It's like, no, don't wait until you're done. Like, optimize it when you go in. Think about that when you start, not when you're dealing with the problems.
Yeah, I don't lift and shift a dirty house, right? Because the dirty will not go away. You're just moving the dirt from one place to the other. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
But you know what? Like,
Totally agree.
I think that the issue actually with this thing as well is that there's a mismatch between these personas in this question. You have the technical people and you have the financial management people. And if you would just ask the financial management people, like, what do they want? We want to just do it fast, get it done. And the engineering people want to do it maybe like the most complicated, the most interesting and fine and future proof. But there's always a bit of a tension there, and it's difficult.
And see, to be fair, there is no single solution for all the different problems. You know what I mean? So the reality is, at least based on my experience, I have been working with several customers doing cloud migrations, and the reality is, depending on the requirements, sometimes you have customers that have critical applications to their business, especially legacy apps, that's they don't want to take the risk about modernizing before migrating. You know what I mean? So they
Yeah,
want to actually take. They prefer to pay the cost of migrating, doing the lift and shift of those applications without even touching the thing. You know what I mean? And modernizing later. Even
exactly.
because, see, there is one important detail. When you modernize, one of the things that's one of the main benefits of the cloud is that that's you can modernize your systems and your apps using cloud service. That some of those services are not available on premise. So that means even if you try to modernize and clean your systems before migrating, then you most probably commonly you need to modernize again, because now you have access to a lot of service, including AI service and so on. So that means you need to modernize 2 times. You know what I mean? And everything is costs. You know what I mean? Because while you are modernizing and cleaning, you are paying for stuff to clean. You know.
Exactly one of the points I was trying to make is that this world is also moving so fast. You always
Yeah.
feel like you're catching up to the latest things, and it's like you might do indeed a modernization, and by the time you're done, you again feel like you need to. So there's just so much overload in that space, and it makes it
Mhm.
actually, I think, a lot of pressure on people that are working in this field, and to kind of keep like have the feeling that they know what they're doing. Yes, usually they know what they're doing, but like, where do we need to put our attention? Like, what is the really, because there's a thousand things going on, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so much.
I have actually a challenging question for you, but before I go to my question, I'm going to just quickly cover before the people start to drop. So Ansel here, he pretty much is saying most customers should have landing zones. It would aid with the cost optimization, but FinOps should always be there. Project initiation needs an infra budget. Great comments, Ansel. And the continuation with newest tags allocated across solution projects totally makes sense. We have also Patrick saying great presentation. For those, just to let you know, Vincent, well, I will go there in a second. Probably I'll raise my question. My main question is, see, I based on my experience, I worked with previously in projects that we had to involve FinOps specialists. But as you know, of course, FinOps is something. It's a principle that you should apply all the time. It's a continuous principle. It's not only with the migration. Well, at least in my perspective, right? Because while you're operating your cloud environments, you still need to apply FinOps and ensure cost optimization, performance, and so on. So now the question is, given that, considering that the cloud providers such as Azure and other cloud providers typically have have advisors that provide recommendations, and it's behind the scenes, as you know, it's running artificial intelligence to assess all the workloads, assess all the traffic in real time to do those workloads and so on. For example, the simple example that you said about okay, I forgot to turn off my virtual machine or my ECS instance. The cloud advisors nowadays, they do that. They fire it instantly, a recommendation to you: oh, be careful, you are not receiving any traffic here, probably you can turn off this and save costs. So my question is, um, how do you how do you feel about customers running and operating their cloud environments on daily basis and having all these built-in functionalities and features out of the box from cloud providers, which are trustable, of course, because it's their own environments? How do you see this as a convincing customers saying, okay, no, you have this, but you still need to invest in an external FinOps team? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's also a question that we get a lot actually, is like, yeah, but what about the advisor that's in the portal of whatever cloud provider I'm using? Um, and it's a very valid question. I think there's a couple things. I think first of all, in practice, what we hear is that people say, I don't go into this portal that much, and if I do, I'm not really acting on those things that are shown there. Like, it's kind of,
Mhm.
I see it, I think like, maybe, but it's not really. They don't go out of their way to kind of do whatever this person's saying. without, and I think that kind of goes to that cultural part a little bit of what we're saying, and this mix of incentives. So I think that's one thing, and I think the second thing about cloud providers and their willingness to bring on consultants or kind of help you bring in tools and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Like probably it helps. Probably they do good things. I think the cloud providers play a very smart game. Also, they with their credits and with the way that they engage with the ecosystem and the incentives that they give to their MSPs and to the people that they work with. They're kind of trying to ramp people up on their cloud spend to kind of get them used to using a lot and getting rewarded. And the MSPs also get rewarded if their clients use a lot. And it's like everyone's kind of in on this game. They obviously have very smart MBA people working for them. But at the end of the day, like all you look at the stock of Microsoft, for example, to know that they know what they're doing. They know the game
Of
they're playing.
course.
They know
Of
exactly
course.
what they're doing. And I know all these people and all these professionals are getting used to working in a certain way, which is not so mindful of the cost. And that the FinOps thing is all about like, let's increase the mindfulness, let's increase the, but to be able to be mindful and to work, you have to have cognitive space, right? You have to have
Yeah.
cognitive space, and you have to also have the time to actually do something. And I think that's where a lot of times the debate kind of slips down, in my opinion, because it's not a question of even knowing. It's not even a question of even wanting. It just, yeah, it's the culture is probably the biggest problem, and the lack of cognitive capacity or cognitive freedom to still do that, I think.
Okay, okay. One last question from my side. I just want to show here the comment from Ansel that is just saying a lot of customers do not have the right tagging policy to track cost per project. That's actually a good point. What I always say is, see, for me personally, even for some people, even riding a bike can be a challenge, and for some people can be basic because you have people riding bikes without ends and this kind of stuff. So the story is, you know what I mean, you in order for you to use properly a cloud, not only with FinOps or cost or performance, with everything, security as well, which is a really important topic, you need to learn what you're using and what you're trying to use. And that's why there are several resources available, including for example, Azure Well Architected Framework and the Cloud Adoption Framework as well. Those frameworks are meant to, combine all the knowledge from many different specialists and many different projects of customers migrating to cloud, and combine them in a framework of best practice that you can use, go there and assess and apply whatever practices are applicable to your environments and your projects. But definitely we need to learn, you know what I mean? We need to know what we are doing. If you don't know what you are doing, there are many ways you can go wrong in so many different things, with many different things in the cloud, because it's a vast world. All right, so quick one, just for my own understanding. So because I had this kind of challenge before, and I'm just curious. So the first mates that you mentioned, so is it some kind of extension that you integrate with the CI/CD platforms such as Azure DevOps?
Yes, it integrates with repos like GitHub or Bitbucket or
Okay,
GitLab,
and
and also
and
with Azure DevOps. Yeah.
and imagine that I bring a first mate to my projects and I connect with my repo. Where do you scan the code? Do you scan the code in the customer environment or on your own environment, cloud environments?
Yeah, so we have multiple options. The standard is that we scan it on our side, but we don't store it, so it gets scanned, analyzed, and the output comes out, and then we delete the container that contains that code, so it never gets stored. But of course, for some companies, they want to go even further and they want it local, and we're also making that possible because we know some people just never want their code to
Perfect.
be.
Yeah, that's great. I'm asking that because I had definitely one project some time ago. I was assessing some requirements about static code analysis, in this case using a famous product, as you guys know, Sonar Cloud and Sonar Cube. and that was exactly one of the points of the customer. They were running critical applications, and they didn't want to expose the code via cloud, because of course, if they have their own environment and if you are scanning on your environment, you are sending everything over the internet. So they wanted to do the scans there. That's why they discarded immediately Sonar Clouds and decided to use Sonar Cube with containers running locally there on the Azure DevOps agent. Well, definitely, it's definitely the way to go, in my opinion. Yeah, in my opinion. So well done. I don't know if everyone else has any questions before we drop. For those, just an FYI for you, Vincent, we have a lot of people that tend to also watch our sessions offline. So do you want to leave any contacts if people want to reach out and learn more about FirstMate?
Definitely, yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn with my name, and it has like a bang icon on it. But if that's somehow difficult, because there might be a bunch of people named me, you can also reach me at vincent@firstmate.cloud. And the website is
Let me
also
just,
firstmate.cloud.
if you have there the email, can you drop me a message there in StreamYard, so I will share in the chats. For now, I'm going to share your LinkedIn as well in the chats in case anyone wants to connect with Vincent. Feel free, and if you send me there a private, yeah, okay, perfect. So I'm going to just share Vincent's email as well in case you want to reach out and learn more about FirstMates. You can also reach out to him. Okay. And without further ado, listen, really great session, Vincent. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for being here. We are going to close the session to give you time to finish your lunch or dinner, depending where you are. We have some people in India having dinner, I assume, I guess, at the moment, and some people in UK and Ireland, which is my case, and Belgium as well. That's probably is going to get some lunchtime now. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope to see you next week. Okay, take care in the
Thanks,
meantime.
everyone. Good luck in the cloud.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.